So thanks for joining. Thanks for attending. I'm really looking forward to this session. The goal here is to cover how you can how you can simplify your SAP migration journey. Yes, I am planning to record it. I have two ways of recording, so hopefully it's gonna work. But obviously no guarantees. I guess this is also more interesting if you're live and you ask the questions that you have during the session. But yes, I wanted to share a little about how I see migration journeys. I see a lot of customers right now and partners asking, we have these migration projects. How do we go around it? How do we make sure that customers are migrating the right way? How do we make sure that everything works smoothly? And that's the big challenge that I see a lot of places. How do we work on this? And then you put in this one, and then you obviously understand that there is a lot of challenge, and you have 871 days before the support runs out of the PI system. And that's a huge challenge, and especially with some of the people I've been talking with that have thousands of integrations, there you really need to get started with the migration. And I guess that's one thing that actually is interesting in that perspective is where are you in your migration journey? What is it that you have? Where are you in the journey? So we can have like a little understanding of what's going on here. So please answer the survey. But obviously, yeah, it is about getting a plan. And I guess if you have the thousands of integrations, you are not going to release and fix this today. But you need to figure out, okay, so how do we get started? And hopefully we will be able to show some of these things in this session. So one of the things, well, let's just see here. I guess, as you see, most people, 60% are planning this. So there is a lot to work on here. Only one has completed it. So that's pretty good. Good. Okay. And yeah, I think this is about this. We need to have a plan for this session. There's a raised hand. Lower hand. Roderick, yes, the session is being recorded if everything works okay. Yeah, it is about having a plan, and it's obviously somewhat easy to, well, easy and easy. You can go in, you can migrate a few scenarios, you can move it into production. But how do we actually build something that is going to last you 100 or 100 years, maybe a little overkill, but at least the next 10 years until the next major change happens, whatever. And for that to happen, you really need to have some experience, and it's not just to go out and as we saw also earlier, quite a few people are just looking for RFPs on the integration. I think it makes sense to understand what's going on. I was talking with one of our customers that had got someone to migrate it, and then there was like, okay, so that's fine, but how do we actually manage all of these? What's all the purposes, all these different challenges that is going around this migration journey? How do we fit all of that together? And I think that is more than just, hey, we want to migrate 200 interfaces. It is also about, okay, what is going to match our business? What is our requirement? And it seems like everybody have different requirements. So some have, we need it on Edge, we need it on other platforms, and that all makes it a lot more challenging. I really hope that Figaf would help, and I do believe that it does in a lot of scenarios, but obviously there's cases where it would not. But before you know whether or not it will, it is a good idea to just get started and explore right now I'm just going to to preface that we are primarily focusing on the integration that you're moving as is. I believe that there is a lot of integrations that should be migrated as is because no one knows what's going on. You don't have the ability to make changes in a good enough manner. Um, Obviously, I recommend that you are checking out our DevOps session that covers a lot about, okay, so we're going to rebuild everything from scratch because we are going on an S4 greenfield implementation, and there we need all of this migrated stuff. Yeah. But obviously, most of this applies to we are going to reuse existing interfaces. There can be some variations on this and saying, we want to change some of it along the way. Okay, so why we think you need to use Figaf. So it is one way really to accelerate it. It is free to start using the tool. Um, it's really easy to deploy, obviously depending on a lot of different scenarios, but it is running in your BTP account, so no data is being exchanged with Figaf. You can easily upgrade to either the DevOps version or the migration version, and thereby you can find out what is actually the ideal way to work on your migration journey. So all of our trials are free, no credit cards required, and this makes it easy for you to explore this. We'll come into more details and what's possible later. So when we are talking about this migration journey, there's obviously a lot of steps in this, and you need to be involved differently around these different steps, and you need to figure out, okay, so how do we work on this? There's a plan phase where you need to figure out and obviously, I know everybody would have different models. This was just what I thought made most sense in a migration journey. You can fit it to whatever model you have. But the idea with the Figaf tool is it is one tool that covers all the different steps in your migration journey. There is a lot of manual steps in between that you would need to perform, but the idea is all of this actually is something that you need to work on yourself. There's the assessment. There is obviously a lot of proof of concepts. And if you have these thousands integrations, do a proof of concept earlier, the better, and get an understanding of what it is to run these integrations. There's the perform part where you have the ability to perform migrations. There's a lot of things in the DevOps platform that simplify this journey. You have Groovy, XSLT editors, all of these different things makes it easier for you to manage the build phase of it. Then there's obviously a lot of things in the testing. We started out as a testing tool on PI, so we know a lot about testing. So it is super critical. And we obviously know a lot about, and we can automate a lot of those things. Then obviously you want to go live here. All this DevOps capabilities is enabling you to deliver integrations, and then you get it at a run state where you are going to continuously deliver on this integration. Good. Skip one. So just if we want to package and say, okay, so there is some parts that is free of this, and as our agreement with SAP, they would promote and say, okay, if you want to test the migration, you can use the testing tool for free. You can use the assessment. You can use this management of the integrations. We believe that that is really a good way for you to explore the tool at no cost, except some BPP credits, etc. And obviously, hopefully, in that process, you say, okay, it makes sense. We want to have the full-fledged version of this because it is going to be a challenge to run this. So that's the idea. Okay, the first part is we want to have an overview of the migration journey. And here we have this migration overview. This just shows you a list of all the different integrations you have. You can see what has been migrated, who did it, which tool, and this is like how many test cases we have. So this is the cockpit of the migration. And we can go in, we can even filter this by waves, because we know a lot of companies are going to have certain waves or criterias. We want to get rid of you using Excel for managing the projects. Because yeah, whenever we work with a customer, it's like, okay, we're going to the Excel, and then we find something, and hopefully you can get all of this inside of this overview report that will enable you to search and find the correct content. Okay, then we get to the assessment, and obviously when I talk assessment, it's the first question you're going to ask is, so does it say how much the effort is for doing the migration? Who wanna ask that? And that is obviously one of the key areas of an assessment, but it's also one of the things that I have a little reservation about, because if I say that this is going to be easy to migrate, or you can, it is going to take you 3 hours to migrate, or 10 hours, or 5 days, I find it really challenging to actually know, because there's a lot of unknown things inside of such an assessment, and those are the things that could blow up the migration. It's pretty easy to go in and say this is a file to IDOC scenario. It's easy to manage. There's no challenges criteria on this. I think so what we created is a landscape report that shows you what you have in your landscape. What are all the ICO? What are all the receivers you have? And thereby all the details. I think this is actually the most complete PI landscape report that you probably would ever see. And we're giving it away for free. And yeah, obviously combine it. SAP does have some interesting thing also in their report, but it's easy to combine it. This is the report. I guess I will probably show it. And yeah, it is. We're trying to make this complete as possible, but notice that it is going to be incomplete, because there's always going to be some things that you want to change, some things that is important for you to look at. So it gives you really a good look at adapters. Go create a lot of pivot tables on these different things and figure out, so how does this actually work in our scenarios, or how a message is split, links with BPMNs, stuff like that. And you can see a more detailed video on it. One of the cool things we added, so we had a customer that I was asking, so we have this SFTP problem, our archive mode at some point in time, and that was causing a problem. How many of our ICO does have that as a problem? And I think that one you could go in and you can create like a search on the adapter data for that. But then you need to figure out also how many of these ICOs do we have and link them. And we did already have a way to filter by this, but we wanted a more customizable way where we did not need to go via and create a patch to support such scenarios. So therefore we created this tagging rules, and there is some tagging rules that you can use on the system. And what this does is it goes in and enables you to do a context search on all message mappings and search for the ones that have more than 10 signature functions inside of it. So it's all the XSLTs that you can create, XPath that you can create. Regex is also possible. And this gives you a huge performance, or then all of these things will pop out to the main menu. And this, we provide some of our rules that we have seen, but you can easily create your own if you want to learn more. Okay, let me show this. And I think this so this is the report we have. We can go in and filter on certain criteria, what has been used, systems, what is migrated, etc. And then we can generate the report with some usage data about how many of these ICOs is being used. And once we do that, we get a report that looks like this. We can see that there's some JNDI things going on here, some Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. We can see we have a sync out that is sent to two receivers. We could see if there was message mappings in it. The operation mapping, message mappings is being displayed here. Function libraries that is being used, all of this, and then we can see the output of this, and we can see if there's some adapters that are causing problems. And this makes it a lot easier for you to say, okay, we have this HTTP adapter that stopped, or and then it's like, okay, then it probably does not make sense to migrate those scenarios because they're never going to run. So create pivot tables on this. This really gives you a lot of insight about what you can actually do, what you have already in your landscape, all the different links. And I think we added a column here about something about what we saw as problems. It's not really necessarily problems here. It's just that it is using a text parameter. The Figaf tool does migrate those things. It's not really a problem, but just something we wanted to highlight because that was a problem some time ago, and I guess that's all of this that it is continuously evolving. Okay, so that's the in-context search, really powerful. And then we get to talk about the migration, and this is where we do have a lot of automation. So we built a tool so you do not necessarily need to use the Figaf tool for migration. You can obviously, and now we are talking about the scenario where you are reusing existing message structures because they are needed and you want to be able to test them. You can also use SAP's migration tool, but there is some challenges. Yeah, and as what is the difference? So I think we do create some better iflows. That's obviously for you to understand or see what is better for you for your specific scenarios. There's use cases where SAP's tool is better with using external message mapping objects. One of our good things is we go in and limit so we have our channel conversion, and here we can go in and specify. We have created our own templates, but you can go in and create your own template. So once you have like an SFT file to SFTP or Samba protocol you want to migrate, you can go in and say, okay, once you have created an adapter that works for that, you just go in and say, okay, I want to create this Samba protocol when it's file. And then all the different files that you have can then use the Samba protocol, SMB protocol, and then Windows Share. And then you can actually, you don't need to go in and remember all the configurations that you're making to make this work. And this reduces the effort a lot and simplifies the process. I think there's also something about the message mappings. We support parameters, we support conversions of what's called scripts. So if you have function libraries or local user-defined functions, we can convert them to Groovy, but we also are able to convert them to yeah, we're also able to convert them to scripts and use SAP's function libraries, and you can even mix them. So there is, for instance, if you convert a Groovy script or a function library into a Groovy script that does not support local or all values of a queue, which is a limitation on some parameters and some challenges. And that's what we then have the ability to mix in between and say, okay, for these we want to use it. But the Groovy have some other opportunities and challenges or benefits, and that's especially when you are talking about specific migrations or lookup functions. So if you have, I'm not sure we will cover it today. If you have what's called PI lookup APIs, you can use the Groovy scripts. We have a Groovy editor that allows you to easily edit these, test them, and then you can modify it. So if you're doing value mapping, stuff like that, lookups, I'm not sure if that, yeah, that's, yeah. But here you can see some of the things that is going on. So we so there is a way you can see some of the things that we think is a problem, but obviously you would first find out when there is a problem once you are testing, and that is the critical part. Does this iFlow actually work? Here's some of the improvements we have added. We do support pipeline configurations. I think a benefit is the way the flows is created, the minimal externalized parameters that you have. We do, if you have, you can go and customize the migration. So if you have message mappings or adapter modules, you can go in and say, when I have this adapter module, I want to plug this Groovy script in the process, and that would reduce the migration efforts. We have a file content converter that is being fully set up and run. Yeah, we have, there's some more thing. And I guess then you come into the different patterns. We do have a number of different patterns that we are working on that would enable you to migrate in different ways. And obviously this depends on what is actually your plan for the migration. How are you actually going to support this once the migration is live? And I think that is one of the things where it makes sense to have multiple different ways of migrating, because that would then reduce the risk, and also your ability to create something that is more relevant. So one of the things we have is this thing about having operation mappings. So we had a couple of customers that had built their own flow to handle migrations, or the way they were building this with error handling step by step, and that meant they had some templates and some process around these templates that made it easy for them to monitor, operate these things. But the challenge they had was with the message mappings. The SAP's tool for migration didn't really give them enough of the mapping to work. So they were looking for different ways to migrate. And then we have our migration tool that are able to create a local process. And then you just plug in this local process for each side of the operation mapping inside of the iFlow, or where you want to use this operation mapping. And then you can easily go in and say, okay, this is how we're running, create your 10 different templates, and then copy this, plug in the operation mapping, and migrate that. So this is a huge, powerful one for specific migrations. We also obviously have full flows. Here, I think if you look at our flow, it is a little more logical than SAP's flow, but obviously that's my opinion. But here we try to create separate local processes for each of the different messages. We have one split up here, and that means that for all of the different messages that you're producing, they would go into a different local process. All that would be processed in one atomic or one iFlow processing, making it a little easier to monitor if you're using these things. And then, yeah, we do have also some extra error handling on side of this. But obviously, which one makes sense, it all depends on your specific scenario. And that's why I wanted to encourage you, do try it. Obviously, if the Figaf tool is not more powerful than SAP's, use SAP's tool, because that's cheaper for you. But if it does provide you some help, if it does simplify the migration, it should be a pretty simple business case for the migration. Make sense? We also have support of pipeline, and I know that there's over the last period of time that well, I guess it was introduced a year ago, and there was a lot of controversy about whether or not this was over-engineered. But right now we see more and more of our customers that are using this or customizing this because it is a better way to run the integrations in, that you can see much more details about what is going on. And yeah, it is one separating the retry logic from the delivery logic, and that simplifies the flows that you have, and that also makes it easier to maintain and run. One of the additions we have to the pipeline is also our transport capabilities that allows you to actually include XSLTs as a part of the partner directory, as a part of the transport process. But I do think that if you're doing migrations, this is one of the patterns that you should be checking out. So there's a question or a comment about it's possible to do it. Yes, I will get to that. We do have an EDI migration scenario going on, and we are we host that in 2 weeks, where we are covering all this about how, if you have EDI messages, how do we actually migrate this? And I think we have added quite a lot of improvement to that area to make that really user-friendly. And if you have EDI, this is the way you want to use whenever you're working on migration. Just a preface. So obviously we try to migrate everything as possible. We can do some improvements on our process, but there is going to be things that you would need to migrate yourself, or fix stuff like that, because either it's something we don't know, for instance, JSON to XML conversion, or if you have some other lookups in your user-defined function using some native PI, or even Java mappings, that is, so we can migrate Java mappings. I do think what we're doing is a bad practice. We are just copying over the Groovy, or creating a Groovy shell around calling standard Java functions. And I don't really think that is really a good approach. I would definitely recommend that you rewrite it in Groovy, because otherwise you're getting something that's not really going to be maintainable. Aman, I tried in the last section to cover what's the difference. I think the main one is, a different way of migrating give you better flexibility for performing the migration. Some easier flow, easier to maintain, fewer parameters, support more adapters that match your specific requirements, and a lot more customization around the full migration. So we can go in and set up global parameters that is being used in the migration. Okay, you wanted to see how this all works out. Okay. So here I have an iFlow, and I want to migrate this. So my idea is I would go in here and I will say, okay, let's do a new mapping. That's the 12th today. It's an invoice. Obviously, you need to give it a name. Probably not ideal using a date name, but for my scenario, it makes a lot of sense. And then I have a number of different ways I can migrate this. I also have the operation mapping up here, and I can say, okay, I want to just migrate this operation mapping, plug it into the existing flow. But let's just say, okay, let's just use the, and we have the pipeline all that would enable you to actually create all the artifacts around this. So we can go in and we can create the invoice process. We can go in and say, hey, this is an IDOC. We don't want it. So there's options to go in and ignore. The same on the line items. We can go and say, hey, this is just an archive entry. It's not relevant. We just want to ignore it. And here we can go in and select which adapters we want to be using for these specific scenarios. So that's when you're migrating with pipeline concept. if we just select use the local process, which I guess is the default way of performing migration, we can say it should deploy it after migration, and though that will cause some problems. And here we can go in again. It's the same shell around it. It's just different iflows that we generate. And then, yeah, we can see the different scripts here. We can see that this user-defined function has been converted to a Groovy script. We can go in and we can also say, hey, we don't want Groovy script, but we want a user-defined function for this. And we can also say, okay, so this methods mapping actually have some imported archives or some imported archive user-defined functions. We want to extract those, so we can actually extract them as XSLT. And here we can see some of the problems that we potentially can see. And I think, yeah, we can go in here, we can click migrate, which will then perform the migration and say, hey, you actually did not use the correct approach, or you forgot to change something here. We have a lot of links inside of the tool, and this makes it easier for you to navigate. So hopefully it will be possible now. You can go in and you can see what's the preview of this specific flow. And I hope you want to agree that this is a little easier to understand what is going on than the multi-flow that SAP is producing of the migration. So now we can go into it. And so one of the challenges was this is a multi-line or multi-split element, and the one I'm mostly using for these things, because it just gives some more challenges on this. Obviously, it's most likely easier to work on. One thing we need to do whenever we work on this is just to save as a version and deploy it. And this is because the Figaf tool needs to know what are the different versions of an object you have, because we want also to be able to migrate it later on. So right now it's triggered for deployment. Let's see if it is actually being deployed. Deployment status, it started. Deployed version, all is good. Cool. So one of the things we do have here is that you have the ability to see this is what I have of externalized parameters. I think if I was using SAP's tool right now, I would have like 60, 70 parameters. Most of them did not need to be modified, and that is a huge improvement. And we can go in and we can see the artifacts that is being created. If you, for instance, take one of these Groovy scripts here that's been converted, we can see, we can open it in Figaf. So we do have the option in Figaf also to work on these Groovy scripts. And I think this simplifies the process quite a bit. So we can go in and we can actually trigger this on our integration suite system, so we can see, does this actually work as it is supposed to be doing? Okay, sidetrack. But that's kind of the way we can migrate. As you saw, really easy. You get all of the artifacts. If it was a partner direct or a pipeline concept, you will also get all of the different components of this. Obviously, we talk about testing. I don't know if it's 60%, but there's definitely a huge effort in testing, because most of the time, if you're doing a one-to-one migration, no one wanna test that because they said we already know that it worked. And the best way you can actually validate this is to take some existing messages you have, send them through, and then see, does this perform as you would expect it to? And one of the things I also like is, as a developer, you want to test early. So it's not an end-to-end test, but it is a good unit test to ensure, does this actually perform as we are supposed to be supposed to? Yeah, without involving business partners, without involving everybody else. You can create messages from the dev or the QA and the production system, replay them, and then you can actually go in and consider or see, does that actually work. And you can do this with volumes, because the the part that matters is not the one where you're sending one invoice with one order. It's the one where you're sending the invoice with 10 different object types that is causing problems. And yeah, our main focus is to take some PI messages, preferably a bunch, convert them to iFlow, see that they can create the same result, and then go in and ignore this. We got CPS, one of our partners that used this, had a lot of success on a project where they were actually able to reuse all of these existing mappings, or reuse these test cases, and the tool there just saved them a lot of effort and gave them the ability to actually show this to customers, and out to the customers say, we have tested it, it seems it is working, and it is producing the same result. Okay, so let's just see how easy it is to actually test these things. So right now I have 32 test cases, but we want to create a new test case from our PI system. So we simply go in and say, hey, demo, webinar 8, 12. And we have option here to extract the partner data, select specific messages. So I sent 2 messages already, but the idea is you can either go in and select the next 10 messages that's being processed on this, if you're changing logging settings, etc. But the default way is to use this SAP logging settings either on the adapter with an adapter module, or by changing the iCool logging setting. And obviously, do bear in mind the impact on the system. Don't do it on a production system with billions of messages being processed. Do consider only logging the messages that you would actually need, or that's not overloading your system. But once we have done that, we can go in and say, hey, we have created something, some messages. And there's a lot of different ways configuration. We can go in and specify how this is supposed to be happening. Yes. And this takes a little while. And we can see we got 2 incoming messages and 6 outgoing messages. So we create a test case on this. And that should be all we needed. So now we have 33 test cases. We can then go in and say, hey, migrate the test case. And we say, okay, so we know that this is our PI message. We want to migrate it to the CPI test case. Normally, I would create a test case for PI, the test suite for PI, where I put all my PI test cases in. And then I would have one for all my CPI test cases. Because after the migration, hopefully you want to keep these test cases, and they would be a better way to document whenever changes happens. So right now, this has been migrated with the Figaf tool, and that means we know where we can find these items. If you had used SAP tool, you just open the iFlow here and say, I want to select it in this point. And then it would be select that specific flow step for where it could fetch the messages out. So let's do that. Now we have created a test case. We can then go in and we can run it. And obviously there is a lot of different steps in a migration journey about how you can actually work on these scenarios. And we can see now that the messages has been triggered or sent. We're getting some errors. I think this is just a 500 error on the receiving system because it was not configured correctly. But right now we can see that we are getting an error on one of the comparisons here. And this is just a timestamp that is different. We have some changes in the mappings. So Figaf tool have a way to cache these mappings. So if you have migrated it once, it will keep it. And that means it would reduce the effort for changes that you're making, because you have one version of this message mapping that's being used in separate iFlows, and also important for script collections, etc. So Now I'll just go in and ignore all of these. But obviously you need to go through this and then you can check it again. And now it will compare the messages and we can now see it is successful. So that's the way you would go through this, see what are the difference, does it make sense, is it okay, or do we actually need to do something around these ones. And now we have a successful test case. That means we have actually proved that our migration worked. And then we can do our unit test, because obviously we do still want to see that the sending system can actually do an end-to-end test on this. But at least we know that the methods mapping, all these components work as expected. And I think that is kind of the important story that you have. You can go in, you can analyze the landscape, you can process, you can migrate, you can customize, and then once you have customized and migrate, you can test that it works, and that feeds into the full cycle about improving the delivery process. Yes, I think that was mostly what I wanted to cover in this demo. Obviously, ask the questions. That is what I'm here. Is there something I didn't outline? Then please ask. So our recommended place is that you run the Figaf tool in your B2P Cloud Foundry account. You can run it other places, like locally on your PC or in the Docker hub. But B2P just have some advantages because it's using the same authentication systems as SAP. And everybody would have access that is also working on the integration suite. So that's our main focus for deployment. We skipped the demo. We already did it. A significant part of this is also all the governance around this. We do have a webinar coming up next week. I don't know, Michael, if you can add the link to this. And the thing is, we obviously want you to to find a better way of working. And I think what we do have here is something that makes it easier to work in integration suite. And you can either use it just for the migration, but we certainly hope that we want to be using it for end-to-end delivery process, because this is just so much so much better. It gives you more ability to actually deliver integration at a faster rate. And if you have these whatever 100 iFlows that you need to deliver, having this in place makes it easier for you to transport all of these scenarios and then also deliver it. So obviously INT4, it's a competitor. They have the testing capability that we have. It works much the same way. In the top level, what you can do on the testing, but they don't have all of the migration capabilities, all of this DevOps capabilities in between. Obviously, a good tool to also do backend testing, but we do think that our tool is more focused for the unit test, making it easier for developers to work on these integrations. Cool. Yes. We have this trial experience, and the idea here is that we wanted to give you a way you can see how you can use the Figaf tool and how you can get started. It's on our blog. That's the second blog on the Figaf side. But the idea here, we actually created a full set or full training on using the Figaf tool. where you can connect it to a BTP trial account and thereby actually explore how does the tool actually work? How does this migration, where you'd actually go through and migrate this same scenario that I just did, do some modifications on it, and then you'd actually see it run. And I think that is really a powerful way that you can go around managing this and explore, does this actually work? And obviously it's not going to connect to your system. That should be the next step. But I think this definitely give you a good opportunity to explore what it is that you can do, and how the tool works. See what this assessment does. See all the different tagging, all the things that we talked about, and also explore the DevOps capability, because that's going to be critical for managing this project and being able to grow your integration suite usage from 10, 100 iFlows to thousands of iFlows. And then once you have seen, okay, that the tool makes sense, we can do migrations, we can set up things, you should try it on your own system, because that is where you will see, this works great, but how does this all work in a more seamless way, something that fits more on your system? And there you would be able to do the comparison, and that is what I encourage you to do, the comparison between the SAP migration tool and the Figaf migration tool, and see, does it actually work on this scenario? And yeah, it's probably going to take you like 4 hours. So it is more effort. You need to get the system running, but you can do it yourself. We have a lot of our customers, or potential customers, that have actually gone through and then seen, okay, this is pretty easy to explore. And then obviously the part is, doing the migration is one thing, but you need to understand or explore, okay, but how does this all scale up to us managing thousands of integrations, or all the integrations that you have, and can we actually run with these scenarios that you have? Yes, thanks. So this is also a good one to look into once you want to take the step further on these scenarios. And obviously we can look into a lot more specific details. So now we have time for some questions. If you have, please put them into the chat, and I'll try to cover as many as possible. Thanks for listening. I hope definitely that you want to take this up, try to explore it, at least do this. That is the most important one, that you go in and understand, okay, so this actually works, we can actually set it up. It's not rocket science, it is pretty easy, and we see a lot of our potential customers that actually go through this and see, okay, hey, this is doable for us. Good. Cool. Questions? I don't know the name on the Q&A. Chat received. So what's the pricing on the on-premise cloud migration? So we do have on the Figaf site, there is pricing options. So in general, we have two prices. One is for each ICO that you migrate. If you migrate with the Figaf tool, it's 100 euros per ICO that you migrate, and then there's some volume discount for that. And I think that if you save an hour, it is definitely worth it. I would imagine you would be saving quite a bit more on this end-to-end flow. And then you can then go and say, okay, I do also want the DevOps tool. You can license the full DevOps tool. It starts at like 2,000 euros a month, or you can go in and say, I just want the transport because that is the better way of work. So there's the question here: what does the free 12 months from SAP starts? So that it starts when you go in and register for the Figaf Migration Edition on figaf.com/migration edition or something like that. That and this is the part where I showed up here. This one here, where you can say, okay, we get this for free for 1 year. The only limits that we have right now is that once you record a message on the PI system, it's only valid for 30 days. If you want to reuse this test case for more than 30 days, you should go and upgrade to the migration edition or the test edition, because that is going to simplify your development flow. Yes. So hopefully that covers the yeah. So obviously you can go and register for trial, or you can go and register for the migration edition. But do bear in mind the limitations that this has. So obviously, if you want to explore testing, do it. But yeah, check it out. All these other capabilities. Yeah, we'll try to send out the replay also. I do not understand plugins for error tracing during the migration. I don't know what you're meaning with that question. So we do, and for Sebastian, we do have a partner program where when you sign up as a partner, you would then be able to resell the solution. So you buy it, use it on your projects, either just the migration or the DevOps, or all the capabilities around it. We think that's the best approach for it. We do not provide a plugin like CPI Helper. We are a plugin in CPI Helper, and if you saw note here, you can see here that the tool actually do look at the I flows that you have. We can do synchronizations on this, and we can actually see specific messages. So we do have a lot of integrations with this. You're just in CPI Helper. Enable here, plug in your URL for your integration suite or the Figaf tool you have. So what's the use case of Figaf? That is this end-to-end flow for migration. So all the way from planning to go live to running, have one tool that manages everything instead of a lot of different islands and a lot of Excel sheets. Now you have one tool that handles all of these different things. What's the accuracy of the tool, Figaf, and the migration assessment? As we talked about earlier, I believe that most of the scenarios you have should be possible to migrate with the Figaf tool. But I think there's a lot of things where you would say as a side option or as a option for doing migration, you probably don't want to use all of the migrations of migration of all the objects. It is more this where it makes sense, and you would go in as an architect saying this makes sense to migrate, this does not make sense. Use the tool in conjunction with your other IT roadmaps to say, okay, yeah, we know this tool is, or this platform is being deprecated. Maybe we should figure out how to simplify that. So the assessment does not give you insight about can it be or what's the effort of doing the migration, just that is yeah, what the content is. So we do not have any use case for AI in this. So one of the things as everybody, the AI uses is really cool. We do have an option in the tool where you can go in and say, hey, I want to use, when you're coding Groovy, you can use a Groovy tool and check all those capabilities. And it does enable you to work a little smarter, but there would obviously be other ways you could work on that. We also do support testing of Edge integration cell. So you can use Edge integration cell with the tool. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, yeah, Edge integration cell have a lot of use cases. I don't think we are able to test Edge integration cells that using the RFC sender adapter because that's just too narrow of a use case. But we do obviously, so if you're testing an adapter we do not support, Figaf will just create a new iFlow with an HTTP sender and send that message into it. No, so David, we do not have the ability to go in and identify over a longer period of time in this assessment report out here, migration report. You do have a field out here that says these how many messages have been processed on this in the this month or the last month. If you want to go further back, you should probably use the SAP tool to extract this, because yeah, it's more like we more want the one that is being used with this. If you're connecting to production, you would be able to see those as being used. So how do we integrate from Figaf to CPI? So on the Figaf plugin or in the Figaf tool, you do have an option here to create an agent. And in this agent, you then just plug in your integration suite URL. What are all the security artifacts? We have different ways of getting access to the custom IDP. Our getting access to the web UI, our recommended approach is to use SAP Passport. I think that's the best part for this. So does the Figaf tool cover all the B2B licensing costs? No, we recommend that you run Figaf in a B2B account that's owned by you, because that means you have the best privacy of the data and we do not have access. And I think most customers don't want to expose all of this data to third parties. But then you are going to pay like 300 euros or dollars a month. It obviously depends on the size of the landscape you have, but that's it to the B2B credit. So the products that make sense for this is obviously SAP PI PO, and then integration suite that we support on these things. So the CPI message monitoring we have, the idea is we have a statistics here. We can go in and we can see, so what are the iFlows that's been processed. We can drill in and we can then see this CPI message monitoring where we can see all details about it. We can filter easier. We can see if message ID, custom header status, stuff like that. So it is something that gives you a little more insight about what is going on. If you had some iFlows in trace mode, you would also be able to go in and create it. So it is similar and it's using the same APIs for it, but it is just enriching the details of this. But then we get into the DevOps part of the tool to manage a lot more of these scenarios. Cool. Ooh, thanks. Really, I appreciate a lot of good questions. Anyone else that we forgot? Please ask. I'll try to go through those. Cool. And nothing in the Q&A. There's a question here on Yes, so the pipeline concept that we had, let's see here. Oh, the pipeline concept we have is obviously using the same as SAP does. Um, we did not really want our and I guess obviously pipeline, if you're talking DevOps, it's a different thing. But the pipeline concept, I think, yeah, it is the same. We're using the same. We build the iFlows in different ways. We are creating XSLTs in different ways, and this gives you some better option of managing these things. So we did not want to invent something like this because it's a lot easier to reuse something that's proven and tested by SAP and should be the standard. But we do have the ability that we can actually see which XSLTs or partner directory entries links to an iFlow, and thus make it easier for you to manage this setup. Cool. Good. I hope to see you also next week for more on this DevOps capability, how you can manage your integration in a better way. And obviously, I hope you would go through our guided tours and explore the simple way to run this integration suite. Cool. Really, thank you for joining. I hope you learned a lot, got some good insights about how you can simplify the migration journey.